So the other day, I was in a call with a friend of mine who plays Genshin, and the topic came up of, the recent controversy when it comes to that game. Now, I personally don't play it, but I am amused by all the conversations and memes around it. For those of you not in the know, Genshin is a gacha game, meaning, it's a game where you get a bunch of characters and run around with them and fight things. And Genshin updates are sort of based on different regions that get added into the game, like big updates, I mean. And there was a region that was added quite some time ago now called Sumeru, which was the first sort of go at a controversy regarding this exact same thing that I'm going to talk about today, and that is whitewashing characters in a sense, but like characters that they're designing themselves, but it's a very peculiar thing. You see, Sumeru was based on various cultures of the Middle East and the desert and Egypt specifically quite a lot, but all the characters, well, they were white. They were just white people. And I mean very white. It's why there was a meme going around, and it's come up again, of the White Pharaoh. The White Pharaoh whose skin color, whose skin tone is literally darker than any goddamn Genshin characters. So it sort of goes beyond just not having black characters or something. It's a very limited range that they're working with here. But people said, oh, wait until Natlan comes out because that'll change. Because Natlan, the next region that is getting added into the game, is based on the Ring of Fire. So that's East Asia, Western America, Native Americans, and so on. And it also has various influences from African cultures and African peoples. I think it's enough for me to say what the controversy is by saying the White Pharaoh's back. People are quite upset, and you got people on one side that are outraged and willing to boycott the game over just what they perceive as whitewashing and racism, and honestly something that could be very easily fixed with just a fucking palette swap. People are joking about giving these characters back their melanin, which, to be fair, in the lore, in this world, yeah, it does not make sense that the people that live in the deserts, the people that live in very hot climates, the people that live in the jungles are all pale as shit. That just kind of doesn't add up at all. And on the other side, you have people defending this game, talking about how, well, it's not an obligation for these developers to add characters like this, and it's not, culturally relevant to people in Asian countries and so on. Some of that is a fair counter-argument, some of it isn't. We'll get to that. But the first thing I want to bring up is that Genshin is not unique. It is not unique when it comes to anime culture and video game culture, and it's not unique at all when it comes to gacha games. Because during this conversation with my friend, I came to realize that I've played a couple of gacha games. I haven't played Genshin, but I'd played Girls Frontline when it actually first came out. Played some Azure Lane, I played quite a bit of Alchemy Stars, and I've thought back to those games I played. And I thought for a moment, I thought really hard. And I could not think of a single black person in any of them. And I went on a small little quest of, Googling various gacha game titles and seeing, one, if I could find dark-skinned characters in these games, in the lineups, and two, if I can find discussions about these issues. And I'd like to sort of separate three groups here. The first group are the offenders that are the worst offenders, as you would put them, which are games that have like nothing, like zero goddamn melanin. And the first I want to mention is Genshin is not the worst. Genshin has some characters that are it's sort of black, but like desaturated, or at least, this guy's pretty tan. Another game by the same company is Honkai Star Rail, and they got nothing. They are the pale as shit. There is nothing to be found here. Then you have Girls Frontline, which is, anime girls that represent various weapons. they're all freaking white. You got Azure Lane, Cancole, 2 boat girl games, again, just white chicks as far as the eye can see. At the very least, that's what I saw. And these are also mostly games where I didn't see any kinds of discussion about it. You know, there were no arguments about dark skin characters and so on. It's just sort of like, there aren't any in this game, whatever. And I don't know the lore of Honkai, but at least with GFL, Azure Lane, and Cancole, you can make the argument that they're all like freaking robots or ghosts or whatever the hell they are. So sure, maybe you know, there's no reason for them canonically to have black characters. But then we get to this second group, which I have marked down here as borderline/grayscaled, and I have 3 examples here. I have Fire Emblem Heroes, Alchemy Stars, and Nikkei. And Genshin also belongs in this group, where there are characters in this that are clearly sort of meant to be, you know, dark-skinned, black, but they're not. They are as light-skinned as possible. They're draking it up to the maximum. You know, I played Alchemy Stars a lot, and I could not recall a single dark-skinned character in that game. Looked it up, and of course, no, there's nothing. You just have, like, dudes like this who are slightly tan. Then you got Nikkei and Fire Emblem Heroes, who are very prominent examples of characters who are grayscaled. This is something that I saw in the discussion about Fire Emblem Heroes, specifically about characters who are clearly, again, meant to be black, but they're very desaturated and ashy, and it's possible for someone to have an ashy skin tone. Someone could look kind of like this. It's just that it's a very sort of specific and clear design choice to make every dark-skinned character look like that. And for these games, I actually did, to some extent, find discussions about this issue. And again, going back to Genshin, very contentious issue as well. People out there, you know, making TikToks or whatever about giving characters back their melanin and fixing the skin tones, however you want to say it. And specifically, there's this character who I've seen a lot of artwork of. And all the artwork gives her like way darker skin than she has canonically in the games. And then I did find some examples of games that sort of escape this issue shockingly, by just having characters that have a darker complexion. I know, crazy. You got Fate Grand Order, which admittedly could not get away, really, with having an entirely white cast, considering that it's, you know, the scope of it is historical figures from all across the world, including some servants in-game from Africa. It would be weird if they were all white. Blue Archive just barely gets in there. Again, it's got some, you know, slightly desaturated characters, I think, but the main one is this lady. I think her name was Karen, who I will say I have noticed more in fan art, you know, existing on various servers with art channels and so on. This is a character I've noticed is fairly popular, and so it's interesting to see that she's the only dark-skinned character in Blue Archive whatsoever. And then there's Arknights, which has a couple of examples like Tuye and Thorns, which gives us an example of a properly dark-skinned male. Kudos to Arknights there, and I was not gonna go through the entire list and look at every character on the Grand Blue Fantasy Gacha wiki, but with the sheer number of goddamn characters in this game and in Grand Blue Fantasy, I'm just hoping that one of them is black. So the next thing I want to talk about is, why is it even happening? Now again, you have people who will say, well, this is just kind of racist, you know, it's racism by the developers, they don't want to add these characters. And in turn, people will say, well, it's their choice, they don't have the obligation to put these characters in, they don't have to if they don't want to. You know, people will talk about cultural differences, people will say that, you know, these people don't have exposure to, like, people of darker complexions in their day-to-day lives, and so that's it. But obviously, it's a bit bit more complicated. Especially when you consider just how pale a lot of these characters are. I mean, Genshin with the White Pharaoh, I bring it up again because the most dark-skinned characters in this game, again, this tanned man, is still paler than some blonde, blue-eyed Nordic men I've seen in my life. And they also clearly have no issue taking cultural inspirations from different people, different nationalities, different races. I mean, Natlan as it exists, again, it's covers a broad area of different influences, and they don't have any issues putting those influences into character designs, as in the form of outfits, in character names, and so on. And so it's a very interesting thing where it doesn't quite seem like it would just be a cultural or racist thing, right? Because if that were the case, why would they even try to bring those cultural influences in the first place? You know, it's someone, again, you might say cultural appropriation. I want to say capitalism. Gacha games have to appeal to a global market, generally speaking. It's not just them, selling their games in Japan if they make it in Japan, and then in the United States, for example. You know, they have the whole world, and like with most media, there is a huge, huge market that is often willing to shell out quite a lot of money for these games. And it is a global and sometimes local market. And I'm talking about the Chinese market here. I think I saw numbers for Genshin where about 40% of the players are in Asia, which is, almost half of these players come from this part of the world, and a huge number of them come from China, and then again, that's money. And the unfortunate reality is that if you have to deal with the Chinese market, you have to deal with the fact that it's pretty racist. I'm not here to delve into the Chinese culture and explain why they're so, why things are the way they are, but you can, Google that yourself. You can find some discussions from people who have experienced this racism, people who have spoken to Chinese people. This post here, which I want to bring up because it did sort of, bring up some valid points, which I think are relevant to what's going on here, which is sort of two things happening. One, there is a long history to China that we'll often talk about being the oldest, civilization in, that's still going into the modern day. And that is, 5,000 years. That is 5,000 years of gradual development into a more culturally homogenous society, a Han Chinese society, and a society which views itself, its history, and its people and its culture as superior to pretty much any other. You don't really have to look that far and that deep to see that being evoked in a lot of Chinese products, in a lot of Chinese media, in their politics, and so on. You're just not really likely to be exposed to a lot of this on a day-to-day basis because it's, Chinese social media is Chinese. It's in Chinese. You're not going to be interacting with it much in the Anglo sphere of the internet. But that doesn't stop it from being extremely racist. And it's not just Genshin that adapts to please this market. It's not just other gacha games that appease this market. It's just media in general. There have been quite a few controversies that sort of, try to sweep under the rug as much as possible regarding Marvel, for example, and Disney in general, having to change their posters when they, show their movies in Chinese markets. This is the poster for Star Wars in the West, and this is the poster for it in China. Did you notice the difference? If you said John Boyega got hit with a shrink ray, you'd be correct. But I want to also say that it doesn't really make it an excuse. I'm not excusing the racism from this market, nor am I absolutely not excusing, companies feeling the need to put profits before principles and adapting to this market in the first place. I'm merely just pointing out why it happens. Although here are two things more that I want to say about this. Firstly, another argument that people have said against having more variety of these skin tones, especially when it comes to Genshin, these cultural influences and so on and so forth, is people have said that, well, it's maybe better that there's no representation at all than just negative and inappropriate representation. For one, they are already taking, influences from these different cultures, so applying those influences to a character with a different skin tone is not exactly like rocket science. These negative depictions already exist in the game, and they kind of stand out more when you don't have normal characters. The only black characters in Honkai Star Rail, in Genshin, appear to be enemies. So you can't play as a black person in these games, but you can beat the shit out of them. And the final point I want to make is, if we take the characters already in the game that already have darker complexion, that are these, ashier skin tones, like this character who gets, I mentioned before, she is a prime example of how it doesn't matter. Nothing actually matters, because let me play a clip of her English voice lines real quick.
And here I was wondering why we got on so well. So you're not from this world, and that's why you don't care for its rules. Now that's how life should be like. Lose the red tape and live free.
Why does she sound like Applejack? And one more thing I want to point out is, Genshin is sort of difficult to gauge because it is the single, I'm pretty sure it is like the gacha game currently. It might be the biggest one in the world. I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure on that, but it still has like an active player base of over 50 million people, which is quite a lot. So it's difficult to compare it to other gacha games in general. But if you compare, for example, some of these games, GFL, Azure Lane, Kenkole, Blue Archive, and Arknights, if you want to be talking about the effects of having characters that the Chinese market doesn't like appearing in these games, there doesn't seem to be any effect. In fact, I would argue it's probably likely a negative effect on the bottom line to limit yourself in this way. You're limiting yourself to this very narrow section where you can design your character. I pointed out before, Genshin isn't just an issue of, there are no black characters. There are barely tan characters. Gacha games are by and large games you play to collect pictures of attractive anime boys and girls. And to make those limitations is to cut yourself off from certain niches. And this is where I bring up this girl again. If you go on certain websites, you might have heard of them, and look up Blue Archive, you will find thousands and thousands of pictures for different characters, and I couldn't get a number on certain sites here, but I could get numbers specifically for Danburu, for example, where she is about 8th or 9th most popular character from this game to have art of her. I'm discounting the player character, doodle version of the player character, and another character's skin, which has more than her, but she has 5.2 thousand art pieces of her on Danburu. She has about 4,000 on this site, she has about 5,000 on this site, and so on. If people want to make the argument that it doesn't matter, that it's a video game, that it's fictional, that the content creators, that the developers can do whatever they want, if they want to make a point that there is no obligation for this, I think that is fine, so long as you also sort of acknowledge that there's also no reason to have a strange limitation on what you find acceptable to put on these characters, in a sense. I mean, for God's sakes, the character designs are limited enough by their art styles. I mean, Fate Grand Order, this dude's drawn the same character 50 goddamn times, and he has every palette on the face of the earth to work with. I was looking at a tier list of Blue Archive characters, trying to see, you know, if there are any other dark-skinned characters, and it's a tier list of all the hair colors, actually. And I just want you to look at this row here of the pink-haired characters. If you told me there were only 4 different characters in that row, I would believe you. So, what is the ultimate point of this video? I don't know, I think at the end I kind of used it as an excuse to look at hentai, actually. These glasses, these goggles, which have buttons on the side, how are they interpreting you waving your hands around in front of you and like throwing fireballs or something? They're not doing that. There's nothing in them that would do this. So this is just bull.